The door hit the wall so hard the glass cracked down the middle. Elara Voss did not move. She was standing at the medication station on the 3rd floor of Cresthaven Memorial, filling out a chart, when 12 armed men poured through the stairwell door 40 feet behind her. She heard the boots, she heard the weapons, she heard someone behind her scream. And she still didn't move. Not yet. She counted. 4 seconds passed. She capped her pen, set the chart down, and turned around slowly the way a person turns when they already know exactly what they're going to do about what they're looking at. The man at the front of the group, 6'2", tactical vest, rifle raised, pointed the barrel directly at her chest. "Nobody moves," he said. "Nobody calls anyone, and nobody gets hurt." Elara looked at the gun, then at him, and then at the 11 men behind him. And the thing that nobody in that hallway understood, the thing that nobody at Cresthaven Memorial had ever been allowed to know, was that Elara Voss had looked down the barrel of more weapons than this man had ever held. The difference was every time she was the one deciding who went home. Petra grabbed her arm from behind. "Elara—" "I see them," Elara said quietly. "What do we do?" Elara didn't answer. She was already measuring angles, counting positions, mapping the room the way she had been trained to map rooms in places that no longer existed on any public map. She had left that life behind. She had buried it. She had built something new on top of the grave and told herself it would hold. It was holding, right up until tonight. But before we get to what Elara did, you need to understand what she had already survived that same night, because the militia wasn't even the worst thing that walked through Cresthaven's doors in the last 6 hours. Elara Voss had been a night shift nurse for 6 years. She had chosen nights deliberately. Days were loud. Days had administrators walking the floors and families crowding rooms and doctors making rounds with their opinions and their questions. Nights were different. Nights were hers. She had transferred to Cresthaven 18 months ago from a hospital 2 states over. No explanation given, none asked for. She was too good at her job for anyone to press. Her patient outcomes were the best on the floor. Her charting was flawless. Her hands never shook. Petra Hahn had once asked her, in the middle of a double shift where 2 patients coded within 40 minutes of each other, "How are you so calm?" And Elara had looked at her and said, "This isn't calm, this is just what I look like." Petra had laughed. She didn't know it wasn't a joke. On the night everything changed, Elara had arrived at 6:50 p.m., 10 minutes before her shift started. She did this every night. She used those 10 minutes to walk the floor, check the board, and quietly identify which situations were going to require the most from her before morning came. What she found when she arrived was already bad enough. Room 312 held a 67-year-old man named Gerald Park, who had been brought in 3 days ago with what looked like pneumonia and turned out to be stage 3 lung cancer. His wife had not left his side. A opinion, a different doctor, a different opinion, a different doctor, a different hospital. Dr. Anya Cross had already been called twice. The daughter had used the word lawsuit once. Room 308 held Lena Parrish, 32 weeks, preeclampsia. Blood pressure that kept spiking no matter what they gave her. The baby was viable but barely. The attending physician had left instructions that were clear. If Lena's pressure crossed a certain threshold, they were moving to emergency delivery. The baby's father was a 23-year-old named Darius, who sat in the chair beside her bed, holding her hand and trying not to look as terrified as he was. And room 301, at the end of the hall, aimed with 2 police officers stationed outside the door, held a man named Warren Rourke. 41 years old, gunshot wound to the abdomen, sustained during a confrontation with federal agents 4 days ago. He was listed as a person of interest in a domestic terrorism investigation. He was also, according to his chart, actively dying. The wound had caused complications no surgery had fully resolved. His kidneys were struggling. The doctors had given him maybe a week. Elara had read Warren Rourke's chart the way she read every chart, as information, not as a story. She had noted his status, noted the police presence, and moved on. She would not understand the significance of room 301 for another 4 hours. What she was focused on in those early hours of her shift was the phone call. It had come in at 8:14 p.m. onto the nursing station. The caller had asked for her by name. The voice on the other end belonged to Thomas Voss, her ex-husband, and what he said stopped her cold. "Jaden's been in an accident." She kept her voice even. "What kind of accident?" "Motorcycle. He's being brought in by ambulance. I'm already in the car. I'm 20 minutes out." A pause. "Elara, they said collapsed lung. They said it's serious." She said nothing for 3 seconds. She set her hand flat on the desk. "Which hospital?" she asked, even though she already knew. "Yours," Thomas said. "Cresthaven." She hung up and stood very still for a moment. Petra had been watching from across the station and came over without being asked. "Who was that?" "My son is coming in," Elara said. "Oh, collapsed lung. ETA about 12 minutes. Petra's face changed. "Elara..." "You can't." "I know," Elara said. "Get Dr. Cole. Tell him I need him on this personally, and tell him why." Petra hesitated. "Does he know you have a son?" "No," Elara said. "Nobody does." She walked away from the station and went into the supply room and stood there for 45 seconds by herself in the dark. She pressed her palms flat against the cool metal shelving and breathed. In and out. Slow. The way she had been taught to breathe when your hands needed to stay still and your mind needed to stay quiet. Jaden was 16. The last time she had seen him was 2 years ago at Christmas, at Thomas's sister's house, where Jaden had looked at her across the dinner table and said, "You were never really there anyway." And then he had left the table and she had let him go, and because she did not know how to explain to a 14-year-old boy that the reason his mother was always somewhere else in her mind was because some parts of her had never made it back from places he could never know she had been. She had been trying to find the words ever since. She was still looking for them when the ambulance bay doors opened and they wheeled her son in on a stretcher. Jaden didn't know his mother was in this building, and Elara wasn't sure she had the right to walk into that room, but she was about to face something far worse than her son's anger, because outside, in the parking structure, 12 men were loading their weapons and checking their watches. Dr. Marcus Cole was the best trauma surgeon Cresthaven had, and he knew it. He was also, depending on who you asked, arrogant, demanding, and occasionally brilliant to the point of being insufferable, and deeply, almost inconveniently, in love with Elara Voss. He had never told her. She had never asked. They had built something between them over 18 months that had no official name, long conversations at the end of shifts, a standing coffee order she knew without asking, the way he always found a reason to come to the 3rd floor even when he had no patients there. Petra called it the most obvious thing in this hospital that nobody will just say out loud. When Petra had come to him and told him that Elara's son was incoming, that Elara had a son, that she had a family she had never mentioned, he had not shown anything on his face. He had simply said, "Set up Bay 3," and walked. But when he looked through the glass at Elara standing in the hallway outside the bay, and watching Jaden's chest rise and fall with the assistance of supplemental oxygen, something crossed Marcus Cole's face that he could not entirely control. He stabilized Jaden within 20 minutes. The collapsed lung responded well to treatment. Jaden was young, otherwise healthy, and furious about being on a stretcher. He kept trying to sit up. He kept asking for his phone. He asked the nurse 3 times if his mum had been called. She had. She was 40 feet away and couldn't make herself walk through the door. Thomas arrived at 9:40 p.m. He was still handsome in the way that men who had once been very handsome often are. The structure remained, even if something behind the eyes had shifted. He found Elara in the hallway and stood beside her and looked through the glass at their son. "He's going to be okay," Thomas said. "I don't know," Elara said. "You should go in." "I know that too." Thomas looked at her sideways. After 11 years of marriage, he had learned not to push. He had also learned that the things Elara would not do were often the things she most needed someone to make her do. He just had never figured out how to be that person for her without losing himself in the process. "He asked for you," Thomas said. "In the ambulance. One of the paramedics told me." Elara pressed her lips together, said nothing. "He's angry at you," Thomas continued. "He's been angry at you for 2 years, but he still asked for you. I think that matters." "It matters," Elara said quietly. "I just don't know what to do with it yet." She was saved from having to decide by her pager going off. Lena Parrish's blood pressure had spiked. Darius was in the hallway shaking. The attending was requesting Elara by name on the 3rd floor. She looked at Thomas, looked at the glass, and walked away. Thomas watched her go and then looked at his son and thought, not for the first time, that he had married someone who was built for emergencies and broken by ordinary life. On the 3rd floor, Elara managed Lena's crisis with the efficiency that everyone at Cresthaven had come to expect from her. She adjusted medications, spoke to the attending, sat with Darius for 4 minutes, and told him exactly what was happening in language that gave him facts instead of fear. When she left the room, Darius looked calmer. Lena's pressure had started to ease. Dr. Anya Cross was waiting in the hallway. Anya Cross had been building her case against Elara for 4 months. It had started after a family complaint. Gerald Park's daughter, ironically from a separate incident months earlier, and had grown into something more personal. Cross believed that Elara was emotionally detached to a degree that constituted a clinical risk. She had no proof. She had patterns. She had 3 documented instances of Elara delivering devastating news to families without any of the softening language the hospital's protocol required. What she did not understand was that Elara did not soften things because she had watched people die when they were not prepared. She believed the truth, delivered clearly, gave people a fighting chance. Anya Cross believed the truth, unfiltered, was unkind. "I need a word, Ms. Voss," Cross said. "I'm on shift." "This won't take long. I've been reviewing your performance documentation and I want to discuss a formal review process that I'm initiating next week. I want you to have time to prepare." Elara looked at her. "You're telling me this on shift at 10 p.m. because you want me to have time to prepare?" Cross didn't blink. "I want to be transparent." "You want me off balance," Elara said, with no heat in her voice at all. "That's fine. You can initiate whatever you like. Right now, I have a pre-eclamptic patient on the edge of emergency delivery and a trauma case downstairs that I'm monitoring. We can talk about my documentation next week." She walked away. Cross watched her go with the expression of someone who had just thrown a punch and hit air. At 10:30 p.m., Petra found Elara at the medication station. "You okay?" Petra asked. "No," Elara said, and which was more than she usually admitted. "But I'm functional." "Your son? Stable? Thomas? Downstairs?" And your cross? About to find out how a formal review feels when you're the one sitting in it. Elara picked up her chart. What's the status on 301? Petra's expression shifted. The police officers outside asked if we could get a doctor in. Said he seemed worse. Elara set the chart down. Get the attending. She didn't know why the words landed heavy. She had no reason to think anything about Warren Rourke except that he was a patient in her hospital. She had no way of knowing that outside, in the parking structure attached to Cresthaven Memorial, a black cargo van had just turned off its engine. 12 men climbed out. One of them said, "We have 40 minutes before the shift change." Move! What those 12 men did not know was that the one person in Cresthaven Memorial who could stop them was already having the worst night of her life, and she hadn't even been tested yet. They came in through the loading dock. The security guard stationed there, a 22-year-old named Kevin, who had worked at Cresthaven for 8 months, was shown a medical equipment ID badge and stepped aside. He would spend a long time after that night thinking about the 8 seconds it took for him to realize something was wrong and the 14 seconds it took for them to zip-tie his wrists behind his back and lock him in the supply closet beside the dock. They moved fast, and they moved quiet. Commander Felix Rourke had planned this for 11 days. He had pulled the hospital's publicly available floor plans. He had run every scenario. He had one objective: get his brother out of room 301 and into private medical care before Warren's body gave out. Felix did not trust the government that had put Warren in that room. He did not trust the doctors who worked under their direction. And he had decided on day 8 of his planning that trust was not something he had left to give anyone. What Felix had not planned for was Elara Voss. He had not planned for her because there was nothing in Cresthaven Memorial's public records, nothing in any staff directory, nothing in any database he had access to that would have told him she was anything other than a night shift nurse with good reviews and a quiet life. The militia hit the 3rd floor at 11:02 p.m. Elara was at the medication station. She heard them before she saw them. The specific weight of boots moving in formation, the way the air in a hallway changes when multiple bodies move through it with intent. She had heard that sound in places that would not appear on this broadcast. Her body knew what it meant before her brain fully processed it. She turned. 12 men, rifles, tactical gear. Felix Rourke at the front, moving toward the nursing station with the quiet authority of someone who had given orders in high-stakes situations before. "Hands where I can see them," he said to the floor in general. His voice was controlled, professional. "I need everyone to stop what they're doing and move to the center of the hallway." 3 nurses froze. A patient's family member coming out of a room dropped the water cups he was carrying and pressed himself against the wall, while Petra, at the far end of the station, went very still. Elara raised her hands and stepped toward the center of the hall. She kept her eyes on Felix and counted his team's positions and said nothing. Felix looked at her. "You in charge on this floor?" "I'm the charge nurse, yes." "Good. Then you're the one I'm talking to." He moved closer. "I need access to room 301. I need the officers outside that room removed, and I need a clear exit path from this hospital. If I get all 3 of those things, nobody in this building gets hurt and we're gone in under an hour." "Room 301 has a critically ill patient," Elara said. "I know that. Moving him could kill him." "That's his choice to make, not yours." Elara looked at him evenly. "What's his name?" Something moved across Felix's face. "Quick." "Gone." "Oh, that's not your concern. You didn't come into a hospital with 12 armed men for a stranger. Elara said. "His name is Warren, and you look like him around the eyes." The silence lasted 3 seconds. Felix stepped forward until he was very close. "You're going to take me to that room?" "I'm going to need your word that my patients are not touched," Elara said. "All of them, including the pregnant woman in 308. You're not in a position to negotiate, and you're not in a position to care for a critically ill man without my help," Elara said. "So let's both be honest about what this situation actually is." Felix stared at her. He had walked into hospitals in 3 countries under considerably more chaotic circumstances than this one. He had never had a nurse look at him the way this woman was looking at him. Not with fear, not with defiance, but with the specific kind of quiet assessment that he recognized from a very different world. He made a decision. "Your patients stay untouched as long as this goes smoothly, that's my word." "Then I'll take you to 301, Elara said. Behind her, Petra exhaled. Elara caught her eye for 1 second and gave her a look that communicated everything without saying anything. The look said, "Find Marcus Cole, get Lena Parrish's team on standby, keep Thomas and Jaden away from the 3rd floor, and stay alive." Petra had known Elara for 18 months. She understood every word of it. Felix posted 4 of his men along the 3rd floor corridor, stationed 2 at the stairwells, and took the remaining 6 with him toward room 301. Elara walked at the front, 2 steps ahead of him, her hands visible, her pace steady. But the 2 police officers outside room 301 had been alerted by radio when the militia breached the building. They were standing with weapons drawn when Elara and Felix turned the corner. What followed were 4 minutes that Elara would describe later, if she ever described them, as a chess match with too many pieces and not enough board. Felix wanted the officers to stand down. The officers refused. Felix's men took flanking positions. One of the officers radioed for backup. Felix told Elara to talk to them. "I can't tell police officers to disarm," Elara said. "I'm not asking you to tell them to disarm," Felix said. "I'm asking you to tell them that if this escalates, 3 people in that room die. Your patient, their backup, and one of them. You'd shoot a police officer. I'm telling you what happens in rooms where weapons get fired."
"Ms. Voss," she said. He went very still. Something changed in his face. "Voss," he repeated quietly. "Your first name." She looked at him. "Elara," she said. Felix Rourke stepped back. 1 step. His expression had shifted into something that was harder to read. Recognition, maybe, or the shadow of it. He said, almost to himself, "That's not possible." "What isn't possible?" Elara asked. He looked at her for a long moment. Then he said, "We'll talk about that later. Right now, the officers." Elara turned to face the 2 officers. She spoke calmly and factually. She told them exactly what was in the room behind them. She told them that Warren Rourke had maybe 72 hours left, and that any crossfire in or near that room would almost certainly end his life before any medical intervention could.
She told them backup would take 12 minutes minimum, and that a great deal could go wrong in 12 minutes. She did not tell them to stand down. She gave them information and let them make their own call. After 40 seconds, the senior officer lowered his weapon and moved aside. Felix opened the door to room 301. Inside, Warren Rourke lay in the hospital bed with the greyish pallor of a man whose body was working very hard to stay in the world. His eyes opened when the door came in. He saw Felix. Something passed across his face, relief, and then something that looked like guilt. "You shouldn't be here," Warren said. "I know," Felix said. He moved to his brother's bedside and put one hand on Warren's arm. "I'm getting you out," You can't get me out. I know what you are, Felix said. I'm still getting you out. Warren's eyes moved past Felix to Elara in the doorway. His face changed completely. Elara, he said. She had not moved. You know him? Felix turned. Warren Rourke looked at Elara Voss with the expression of a man who had not expected to ever see a ghost walk back through a door, and said, She saved my life once, a long time ago, in a country that both of us were never officially in. And just like that, the malicious plan, Elara's secrets, and everything she had spent 6 years trying to bury came crashing into the same room on the same night. But the night wasn't done breaking things open yet, because downstairs Jaden Voss had climbed out of his hospital bed, and he was looking for his mother. Nobody had told Jaden Voss that the hospital was under siege. He had pulled out his IV line, which had hurt more than he expected, and wrapped the tape around his arm twice and put on his jeans and his sneakers over the hospital gown, because that was the only way he was leaving that room. He had heard voices in the corridor that sounded wrong. He had heard what sounded like a radio and then what sounded like boots, and his first thought, because he was 16 and stubborn and had not inherited his mother's instinct for threat assessment, was that he was going to find out what was going on. Thomas had stepped out of the ER bay to get coffee. He would spend the rest of his life processing those 8 minutes. Jaden opened the door and looked out. The ER floor was not where the militia had concentrated, but 2 of Felix's men had been posted at the stairwell entrance on the ground level, all moved toward him. Back in the room, now. Moved toward him. Back in the room, now. Jaden, in what Elara would later describe as the most terrifying and most recognizably herself thing he had ever done, said, I just want to know what's happening. Room, now, the man said, close enough to grab him. Thomas came around the corner with 2 paper cups of coffee and walked directly into the situation. He dropped both cups. He looked at his son, at the armed man, and did the only thing he could think to do. He put himself between the gun and Jaden. He's a patient, Thomas said, voice remarkably steady. Collapsed lung. He needs to be in bed. The militia member looked at them both. Something in Thomas's steadiness seemed to register. Back in the room, he said. Both of you. Door closed. You don't come out, you don't make any calls, and nothing happens to either of you. Thomas guided Jaden backward into the bay. Jaden tried to argue. Thomas sat him down on the bed and said, with a firmness that brooked nothing, Sit down, Jaden. Jaden sat. Is Mum here? He asked. Thomas looked at him. Yes. Does she know about this? I have a feeling, Thomas said carefully, that your mother knows quite a bit about what's happening right now. Upstairs in room 301, Elara was having a conversation she had never expected to have again. Warren Rourke was talking. His voice was thin and it cost him effort, but he talked. He told Felix what Elara was, and not everything, not the operational details that were sealed in vaults she had signed her life across, but enough. He told Felix that Elara Voss had been one of the best long-range specialists the program had ever fielded, that she had pulled Warren out of a collapsed structure in a location that did not exist on public record, with her bare hands and a radio that wasn't working, while covering them both from a position that should have gotten her killed. She left after that, Warren said. Everybody knew she was done, but nobody wanted to say it first. She just turned in her gear and walked. Felix was looking at Elara with new eyes. Elara was looking at the monitors above Warren's bed with the attention she gave to things that needed to be fixed. His O2 is dropping, she said. What does that mean? Felix asked. It means we need to stabilize him before we talk about moving him anywhere. She looked at Felix directly. "I need equipment from the supply room at the end of this hall. One of your men can come with me, but I need to move now." Felix nodded to one of his team. As Elara moved toward the door, Felix caught her arm, not rough, but firm. "Why are you helping him?" Elara looked at the hand on her arm, then at Felix. "He's a patient in my hospital," she said. "That's the only reason I need." She left the room. In the corridor, with a militia member 2 paces behind her, she moved to the supply room. She gathered what she needed for Warren, and she palmed one additional item, small, easy to miss, that she slid into the pocket of her scrubs without breaking stride. Marcus Cole found her on the way back. He had been alerted by Petra. He had come to the 3rd floor via the service elevator, which the militia had not covered. He stepped out into the corridor and saw Elara walking with an armed escort and stopped. She saw him. Her eyes moved to the militia member behind her, then back to Marcus. She shook her head, what its small, specific movement. "Don't." Marcus had spent 18 months learning to read Elara Voss. He understood. He stepped back into an alcove as they passed. He waited until they were beyond him, and then fell in behind, quiet, because he was also, underneath all the arrogance and the brilliant surgeon performance, a man who was very good in a crisis. He just usually expressed it differently. In room 301, Elara stabilized Warren's oxygen. It took 11 minutes. Felix watched every move she made. "He can't be moved tonight," she said finally. "His system cannot handle transport. If you take him out of this hospital in this condition, he will likely be dead within 4 hours. Felix's jaw tightened. "Then what do you suggest?" "I suggest," Elara said, "that you let me keep him alive while we find a way out of this situation that doesn't end with your brother dying and half your team in federal custody." The lights went out, not a flicker, a complete cut. The entire floor dropped into darkness for 3 full seconds before the emergency generators kicked on and the red emergency lighting bled back in. Someone had cut the main power. Felix's radio burst. One of his men, "Power's out on the grid. We've got police outside the building. They're setting a perimeter." Felix turned to Elara. "This wasn't part of my plan." "Power cuts never are," Elara said. She was already moving to the door. "I have a patient in 308 on blood pressure medication that requires refrigeration and a baby that needs to stay in the womb for at least another 4 weeks. If your people outside cut that power to establish leverage, they just made this hospital very dangerous, very fast." She opened the door without waiting for permission. Felix grabbed her arm again. "Where are you going?" "To keep your brother's neighbor from losing her baby," Elara said flatly. "You can come if you want to make sure I'm not doing something you don't like. But I'm going." She went. Felix Rourke stood in the doorway of his dying brother's room and watched Elara Voss walk down a dim, emergency-lit corridor like she owned everything the light touched. And he made a decision that he would later recognize as the one thing that had kept the night from ending in catastrophe. But he did not stop her. In 308, Lena Parrish's blood pressure monitor was alarming. Darius was standing, both hands gripping the bed rail, saying her name over and over. The emergency lighting made the room look like something from a different world. Elara came through the door and went straight to Lena, checked the monitor, checked her eyes, ran through the assessment in under 90 seconds. She turned to Darius. "The baby is okay right now. I need you to breathe. Slowly, like this." She demonstrated. "Lena's going to look at you and take her breathing from yours. Can you do that?" Darius nodded. "Good. Do it now." She stepped back, watched them breathe together. This young couple in the red emergency glow, finding a rhythm between them in the middle of something that had no right to be happening. Something moved in Elara's chest that she could not immediately categorize. Marcus was in the doorway. "I need to talk to you," he said quietly. "Not now." "Elara." His voice had something in it she had not heard before. "I found something on one of the militia members who's been posted near the stairwell. He's not with them. He doesn't move right. He doesn't hold his weapon right. And he's been on his phone twice in the last 20 minutes. Elara looked at him. "He's not militia," Marcus said. "I think he's federal, and if he is, they didn't come here for Felix. They came here for someone who can identify what Warren Rourke knows." The implications arranged themselves in Elara's mind in approximately 4 seconds. The informant inside the militia wasn't there to observe. Protecting one man meant exposing. Protecting one man meant exposing everything she had spent 6 years making everyone forget. Until now. There are people in the world who are trained to assess, decide, and act in the time it takes most people to finish assessing. Elara Voss was one of them. She had not used that training in 6 years. But training like hers does not leave. It waits. She pulled the item from her scrubs pocket, a small radio she had taken from the supply room, intended for emergencies, frequency already set to the hospital security channel. She handed it to Marcus. "Listen only," she said. "Don't transmit. If you hear anything that sounds like they're moving on Warren's room, you get to Petra, and you get everyone from this floor into the service stairwell. Understood?" "Elara." "Marcus." She looked at him with the directness she kept behind glass on most days. "I need you to trust me right now and ask questions later. Can you do that?" He held her gaze for a moment. Then he took the radio. "Later," he said. "We're definitely talking later." She was already gone. She identified the informant in under 4 minutes. Marcus had been right. The man was positioned near the stairwell at the north end of the 3rd floor, far enough from the other militia members to be outside easy line of sight, close enough to move quickly when needed. He held his rifle with the grip of someone trained to use one, but the stance was slightly wrong for Felix's crew, and the small errors that only someone who had spent years in the same rooms as both groups would catch. Elara approached from the medication cart, wheeling it casually, the way nurses had always used carts and the noise they made as cover for movement. She stopped beside him. "You need to lower your heart rate," she said quietly, without looking at him. He went very still. "I've seen 3 genuine militia members in the last 2 hours, she said. "None of them have been on their phones. None of them have checked their watch more than once. You've done both 4 times each. That's an extraction timeline." She looked at him calmly. "Warren Rourke dies and this scene gets messier. Felix goes down. Nobody gets what they came for. Is that the plan?" The man looked at her. His hand shifted on the rifle. "Easy," Elara said. You don't want to fire a weapon in a hospital corridor with a pregnant woman 30 feet behind that wall. I know that. You know that." A pause. "Who are you?" he asked. "I'm nobody," Elara said. "And if you do what I'm about to suggest, I'll still be nobody by morning, and you can decide what you tell whoever sent you." She told him what she needed. She needed him to stand down and to pass to whoever was outside that Warren Rourke's medical status was genuinely critical, that any aggressive action on the building could not be cleanly executed without civilian and patient casualties, and that a negotiated withdrawal was achievable within 90 minutes if the external response gave it room. "Why would I do that?" he asked. "Because you're in a hospital," Elara said simply. "And somewhere inside whatever they told you to do tonight," she told him exactly what she had done. "I'm sorry," she said. I'm sorry, he said. I'm sorry, 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 she said. I'm sorry. She told him exactly what she had discovered. She told him without softening it, that someone in his group had a different objective, that Warren had been the target from both directions. She watched Felix's face move through several things rapidly and settle on cold, contained fury. Which one? It doesn't matter right now, Elara said. What matters is that I've bought you a window. Maybe 90 minutes before the response outside tightens. In that window, we can arrange a medical transfer for Warren, properly, with the equipment he actually needs, under conditions that won't kill him. I can make the call. I know who to contact. Felix stared at her.
You do that? I do that for Warren, she said. Because I know what he knew, and I know why he ran, and I know what it costs to carry something like that for a long time without putting it down. A pause. I also know that you love your brother. And I know what it is to have the people you love in danger while you're standing there with nothing useful in your hands. It was the most she had said about herself in 6 years. Felix looked at her for a long moment. Then he said, "Make the call." The next 40 minutes were the most precise work Elara had done since the life she didn't talk about. She coordinated Warren's transfer to a private medical facility through a contact she had not called in 4 years, a call that was answered on the second ring by someone who said nothing except,
I wondered if this number still worked, and then listened. She managed Lena Parrish's escalating blood pressure and put a team on standby for emergency delivery if it came to that. She sent Marcus floor by floor with updates via the radio, keeping him back from the militia's sightlines. She sent Petra to Thomas and Jaden with instructions that were direct and clear. Stay in the bay, door closed, Jaden stays in bed. Petra found them where Thomas had told Jaden, in a voice that allowed zero argument, to stay. Jaden had stayed. He was sitting on the edge of the bed with his arms crossed and his jaw set, and he looked, Petra thought, exactly like his mother. She told him his mother was handling the situation on the 3rd floor. "What does that mean?" Jaden asked. Petra considered. "It means everything is going to be okay," she said.
"Yeah, because she's the one handling it." Jaden was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "She's always handling something." "I know," Petra said. "She never stops." "I know that too." Petra sat down beside him. "Can I tell you something?" He shrugged. "Your mum talks about you." Petra kept her voice even. "Not much. She doesn't talk about much. But you?" She talks about you the way people talk about things they're afraid to break if they look at them too directly. She paused. She asked me last week what you do when you love someone and you know you haven't been what they needed. I didn't have a good answer, but I think she's still looking for one. Jaden said nothing for a long time. Then he said quietly, I want to see her when this is over. I'll tell her that, Petra said. Warren Rourke was transferred at 12:47 a.m.
Come, the team Felix had arranged met the hospital's side entrance. Elara oversaw every step of the transfer personally, checking Warren's vitals twice, speaking to the transport medic in language that was precise and detailed enough that Felix's men watched in silence. At the door, Warren reached up and caught her hand. Elara. Rest, she said. I never told anyone. I know. That night, I never told anyone you were there. I know, Warren, she said. Softer. I know you didn't. He let go of her hand. They took him out. Felix stood beside her at the door and watched his brother go. After a moment, he said, What happens now? Now you walk out of my hospital, Elara said, before the window closes. And after? After isn't my department, she said. Medicine is my department. He almost smiled. Almost. The program lost something when you left, he said. Elara looked at him steadily. The program lost me when it needed to. That was the right outcome for everyone. She walked back inside without looking back. Felix Rourke walked out of Cresthaven Memorial at 1:03 a.m. His team followed. The police moved in within 4 minutes, and Elara Voss went back to the 3rd floor and finished her shift. But the night had one thing left in it, and it was the thing she had been both dreading and reaching for since 8:14 p.m. By 3 a.m., the police had cleared the building and taken statements. Anya Cross had arrived at 2:30 in a suit jacket over pajamas and spent 40 minutes talking to officers before anyone thought to debrief the nursing staff. When she finally got to Elara, she had a notepad and the expression of someone recalibrating. The officers said you negotiated the withdrawal, Cross said. I talked to the people in the room and tried to find the best outcome for my patients, Elara said. They said you... Dr. Cross, Elara said quietly. I've been on shift for 8 hours. My patients need to be checked. Is there something you need from me right now that can't wait until morning? Anya Cross looked at her for a long moment. Then she closed her notepad. The review, she said. I'm withdrawing it. Elara nodded once. Thank you. She walked away. Lena Parrish did not deliver that night. Her blood pressure stabilized by 2 a.m. Darius had fallen asleep in the chair beside her bed, their hands still linked across the rail. When Elara checked on them at 3:15,
Tell me, he said. No, she said. Not tell me, he said. No, she said, not unkindly. Elara? Marcus. She turned to face him. There are things about my life before this hospital that I can't explain, that I won't explain, and I need to know if that's something you can accept. He looked at her. This woman who had just walked through a 12-man armed siege and come out the other side looking like someone who had stayed up too late doing paperwork. I've been accepting things about you I didn't fully understand for 18 months, he said. I'm good at it by now. Something in her face loosened. Not much, but enough. Jaden wants to see me, she said. I know. Petra told me. I don't know what to say to him. You'll figure it out, Marcus said. You figure everything out. Not this, Elara said. This is the one thing I've never figured out. She went downstairs. The ER bay was quiet. Thomas was asleep in the chair, head tilted back, mouth slightly open. Jaden was awake, sitting up in bed, looking at the door when she opened it like he had been watching it for a while. She came in and stood at the foot of his bed. He looked at her. She looked at him. And for a long moment, neither of them said anything, because some conversations carry enough weight that they need a moment to settle before the words can hold them. "I heard it was bad up there," Jaden said finally. "It was a lot," Elara said. "You okay?" She looked at her son, this teenager, with her eyes and Thomas's jaw and something in the set of his shoulders that was entirely his own. And she said, "Honestly, I'm getting there." He nodded slowly. "Me too." She moved to the side of his bed. She sat down in the chair that Thomas was not occupying. She put her hands in her lap. "I have a lot to explain to you," she said. "I know. Not all of it is something I can actually explain, but the part that matters, Dwight, the part about you, and that I can say." She looked at him directly. "I never stopped. Whatever it looked like from where you were standing, I never stopped." Jaden was quiet for a moment. His jaw moved like he was working through something. Then he said, "Okay." One word, but it was enough to build something on. Outside, the sun was starting. Slow and ordinary, or the kind of morning that has no memory of what happened in the dark before it. Elara Voss sat beside her son and watched it come. Nobody at Cresthaven Memorial talked about the night of the siege the way you might expect. There were no big speeches, no ceremony. Elara came back the following Tuesday, same shift, same station, same steady hands. The difference was that when Petra handed her a chart and said long night, she actually said, "Yeah, getting better though." And if you'd been watching closely, if you'd been the kind of person who looked past the surface of things, you might have noticed that Dr. Marcus Cole started bringing 2 coffees to the 3rd floor instead of 1, and that a 16-year-old boy started texting his mother every Tuesday when her shift started, and that Elara Voss, who had never been good at ordinary life, was slowly, quietly, learning what it meant to stay. She had killed before. She had saved lives because of it, and in spite of it. And now, maybe for the first time, she was building something that didn't need her to be either. If you made it to the end of this story, drop a comment below with just the word "stay." We'll know you were here for all of it. And if this is your first time finding this channel, welcome. There's a lot more where this came from,